Hello, my name is Rachel Abraham, and I am a political analyst who works for the Safadi Center for International Diplomacy, Research, Public Relations, and Human Rights. I am also the author of the book Women in Jihad, Debating Palestinian Female Suicide Bombings in the American, Israeli, and Arab Media, and I am also an Israel-based journalist. I think that this settlement between Armenia and Azerbaijan is the best that the Azerbaijani people could hope at this time, because whether we like it or not, Biden won the elections in the United States. Now, there's some claims of fraud, but all the media outlets in the state say that they're unsubstantiated. And if that's really the case, then we have to prepare for a Biden presidency. And Biden is much more pro-Armenian than Trump. And if we want to make sure that Azerbaijan is in a good position going into a Biden presidency, that means ending the conflict as soon as possible and preserving all of the gains that Azerbaijan made as soon as possible. Now, Azerbaijan made significant gains into Nagorno-Karabakh, and under the peace treaty, they get all 7 Azerbaijani districts and about 20% of Nagorno-Karabakh, and they have entrenched Russian mediation in charge of the one who oversees the agreement, which means that it won't be so easy for the Armenians to backtrack and say, listen, America has a new president and he's more friendly to us. And we would rather have him oversee it than Russia, or to have France oversee it, who is not so pro-Azerbaijan, rather than Russia. They're basically now stuck with Russia overseeing the peace agreement, whether they like it or not. And by the time Biden enters the White House on January 20th, it will be a fact on the ground, and it will be much harder for him to intervene and say, for Armenia to intervene and say, hey, we're going to change things. No, it will be a solid agreement by January 20th and a fact on the ground. So they're going to be stuck with this agreement whether they like it or not. The Azerbaijan's going to reclaim about 20% of Nagorno-Karabakh and the 7 Azerbaijani districts long before Biden enters the White House. Now, I would be more concerned about the fact that the Armenians are choosing to burn their homes, so the Azerbaijani internally displaced people cannot return to their homes before Azerbaijan takes over. This is greatly problematic, and the Russian peacekeepers should make sure that this comes to an end, because as an Israeli, this reminds me basically when the Palestinians destroyed greenhouses that Israel left them when they withdrew and decided to use them as rocket launchers. This was a pact of pure hatred to burn down a home just so Azerbaijanis could not live there. And this should be widely condemned by the international community. And Russia should make sure that in the other areas that Armenia withdraws from and hands over to Azerbaijan, that they do not burn down any more homes, because each person whose home is burnt down, that it's like a destroyed life, because it was a home of an internally displaced refugee, and they won't be able to return to their home because it won't exist anymore. And this is just nasty what they did, and it's a real shame that it's not getting widespread coverage in the Israeli media or the American media or the Western media. I read about it on Al Jazeera, and it just hasn't been covered here in Israel so far. Now, to the Israelis' credit, it's still Saturday, so it's a slow news day. Maybe it will pop up tomorrow, but in America, they don't operate slow on Saturday like they do in Israel. So it's a real pity that it hasn't shown up on the news there. I would say that the media coverage in Israel has been very mixed of this particular conflict. The Israel Hayom newspaper has been a very good friend of Azerbaijan. It's closely associated with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Jerusalem Post, I would say, is a bit mixed. You have pro-Armenian articles, and you also have pro-Azerbaijani articles. Arutz Sheva, I would also say, is mixed. It's a combination of both. Their editor is a bit neutral. Jewish press has been very pro-Azerbaijan. It's the largest Jewish newspaper in New York. The JCA, Canadian Jewish newspaper, has been very pro-Azerbaijan as well. Jerusalem Online has been very pro-Azerbaijan. The Times of Israel, however, has been very pro-Armenia, and there was even a pro-Azerbaijan blogger that had her article on the plight of civilians in Gaza. It was unpublished because they called it, the superiors intervened and called it Azerbaijani propaganda. Of course, Haaretz is very pro-Armenian, but they have no respect among Israelis, so I wouldn't care what they have to say. No Israeli respects them. No self-respecting Israeli. I would be more concerned about the pro-Armenian articles coming out of the Times of Israel and some of the ones coming out of Arutz Sheva and Jerusalem Post. However, to be fair to Arutz Sheva and Jerusalem Post, they do try to balance it with pro-Azerbaijan articles, so I can give them credit for that. However, the Times of Israel does not do that at all, in the slightest. I think that the Azerbaijan should make sure that Russia mainly stabilizes the situation in overseeing that there's a smooth transfer of power. I think that it won't help very much to have Turkey do this, because it will just ensure that the Armenians do more things that are spiteful, because they hate the Turks even more than they hate the Azerbaijanis. And a good way towards a peaceful settlement would be to have a truly neutral observer, and that would be Russia. Also, Erdogan is a bit decisive figure abroad. He's not very popular in the international community, so I think, and I think it's undermined Azerbaijan's public relations with different countries around the world being so closely associated with Erdogan's government. It definitely caused many people here in Israel who would have normally supported Azerbaijan to think twice about supporting Azerbaijan merely because of the close friendship with Erdogan. While if Azerbaijan did not have a good relationship with Erdogan, they wouldn't have thought twice. We have a very long negative history with the Armenians going back to Ottoman days. In the 1500s, they did a blood libel against us. 3,000 mountain Jews were massacred by Armenians in 1918. 20,000 Armenians joined the SS and fought with Hitler against the Jewish people. They worked very closely with Palestinian terror organizations. They helped the Arabs take over the old city of Jerusalem during the 1948 Israeli War of Independence. We don't have such a good history with them. During the Ottomans, we were rivals. Jewish people preferred to live near Muslims rather than Armenians. The only reason to even think about supporting Armenia from an Israeli perspective is basically because Erdogan has come out and been very anti-Israel. And now I've tried to counter that by arguing, okay, but Azerbaijan is not identical to Turkey. It's a sovereign country. It's separate. And Armenia is backed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, when despite all of Erdogan's rhetoric, definitely the Islamic Republic of Iran is a greater enemy to the state of Israel, because at least we have $6 billion worth of trade with Turkey. We have nothing with Iran except their desire to wipe us off the face of the earth. However, a lot of Israelis who are less educated don't know that. I think the Israeli government very much supports Azerbaijan, which is why Netanyahu's official newspaper is very much in supportive of the Azerbaijani people. However, unfortunately, I don't think it necessarily transcends to the lay people, because a lot of people don't know where Azerbaijan is on the map here, and they just see that Erdogan's supporting Azerbaijan and he's anti-Israel, so they automatically think to support Armenia without remembering the history, the negative history between Jewish people and Armenia, or realizing that Armenia is backed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And this is very unfortunate. I think the ties between Azerbaijan and Turkey caused Azerbaijan a lot of damage. And I think now, since there's a peace agreement they should push Erdogan aside, and they should let Russia take over the situation, make sure that and that will make it more likely that the Armenians won't burn any more homes.